we light our chalice with words adapted from those by the Reverend Margaret Kirk. We remain in our separate places, yet we gather now as one. We know only a little, if anything, of each other's thoughts, dreams, and cherished hopes. Only a very little, if anything, of each other's confusion and anxiety. But together, in virtual congregation, we become as one. Lifted by the knowledge that we are watching together, by the Spirit flowing among us, the comfort of togetherness. Every openness of heart takes away our separateness and binds us to the common purpose of serving what is good and beautiful and true. Welcome. Welcome here to our fourth Sunday already from a closed meeting house. We gather once more from the safety of our own homes, doing what we can to prevent the spread of coronavirus, COVID-19. The effect of the virus is getting more prominent. This week has seen a sharp rise in the numbers of those known to have the virus, and sadly the number of those dying with it. This is a worrying time. This is a time of concern. We are each of us living with that concern. It may seem heightened as we ourselves remain inside alone or in very small numbers. But we are, I hope, following the advice to minimise the risk. Our service today, this Palm Sunday service, is intended to provide a place of refuge for all. Whether at home, alone, working as a key worker, trying to manage the surprisingly tiring task of keeping everybody indoors, whatever your circumstances at this extraordinary time, this time is for you. Welcome. Let us come together in prayer. Eternal Spirit, great mystery beyond our ideas, God of many names and none. At this time, in this place, we are grateful for this community of Unitarians, for this virtual gathering of potential. In our lives, we have the opportunity, by many means, to connect with one another, to strengthen our bonds of friendship and of commitment. We know the world in which we live is fragmented, riven with confusion, concern, upset, and worry. In our lives, we have the opportunity to create, to bring people together, to calm fears, to build a better way. Yet the world in which we live is beautiful too. It is a place where goodness can thrive, where life is bountiful, from where we are nourished. In our lives, we have the opportunity to hold on to that beauty, to protect it from damage, to help preserve it for future generations. Great Spirit of life, let us be the builders of the future. May we be generous and caring, honest and compassionate, with unconditional love for all who are in need. In our lives lies the future. May our hearts and our minds join with others in making this world a better place. Amen. Our reading today comes from the current President of the General Assembly of Unitarian and Free Christian Churches, for a few days at least, from the Reverend Celia Cartwright. This is a piece that she wrote some time ago called The Spirit of Sacredness. I remember the Unitarian faith of my childhood, still residing predominantly in Bible-based teaching, but always seeking out rational answers. It's an approach still favoured by some, but for me it became too constricted, too rational, too dry. When I needed it most, it failed to nourish me, and I knew I needed to find something else. I needed to find in my worship that which I found lying flat on my back on a hillside in summer beneath a star-filled black sky, or sitting on a cliff top mesmerised by the power of waves crashing onto the rocks below me, or walking in soft rain, or scuffing up autumn leaves, or... Now, Thomas More, in his book The Soul's Religion, speaks of spiritual growth, and he stresses the need for emptying, for emptiness. He says that to enter the area of the spiritual and the holy, the precinct of the sacred, requires a profound openness of mind and heart. It took a death to empty me, a death to strip me of much that I held as religion, belief, faith. A death to challenge the unchallenged and begin in earnest my own journey along the path of my Unitarian faith. Sometimes I re-encountered familiar scenes, the humility of Jesus, the myths of the ancients, but often I found new vistas, new experiences, new understanding, some absurd, some rational, some fascinating, and some simply wonderful. Sometimes, in the busyness and fullness of my life, I find myself yearning for the emptiness. So I make time to stop and empty myself, knowing the thread of my Unitarian faith will hold me safe. From the emptiness, I re-engage with what is truly real, both the rational and the mystical, for each has its place in my spiritual lexicon. In the emptying and the filling, I find my inspiration for the next stage in the journey. Words by the Reverend Celia Cartwright. Our hymn today, with words by Andrew Hill, reminds us of the need to follow our conscience, to honour all, to keep peace. Valuable words at this difficult time. Conscience, guide our footsteps.
As we struggle forward.
I start this piece today recognising how fortunate I am. So far as I know, I have not contracted the coronavirus. At least I've not suffered from it. Nor have others I am in lockdown with. I'm aware that many out there have suffered or are suffering with the effects of COVID-19. Yet I am playing my part, as I hope all are, in trying to avoid helping to spread the virus further. I'm staying in as much as possible, only leaving the house for absolutely essential trips, food shopping mostly. I am fortunate. We are fortunate. But that doesn't stop our minds from wondering over how uncomfortable and frustrating lockdown can be. We are warm, we are dry, we have food. We have the radio, we have Netflix, we have Facebook, we have other social media. We have books, we have a piano, we have a guitar, and we have each other. And I'm sorry to admit that at certain times, I still want to be able to go out somewhere else. I want to see the sea. I want to sit on the top deck of the double-decker bus. I want to meet with friends. And it would be nice if there were a few more in this meeting house just now, rather than just me. But I can't. And deep down, I know and accept that it is the right thing just now. I am playing my part in a story that does not focus on me. I'm playing a part in a story in which we all have a role, and where we must do our very best to stick to the script and our stage directions. Where will the story end? We don't really know. But we can help it progress to a better one. Now today is Palm Sunday. Well, it is if you're watching from the first day that this is available. Palm Sunday, a festival in the Christian faith. The day marks the remembrance of, it is termed, Jesus' triumphant arrival at the gates of Jerusalem. Now, I mentioned last week how stories from many different faiths are focused around journeys, and the stories of Jesus in the Bible are no exception. They're often related to travel. They're focused initially around his wanderings around the desert on his own, then he travels across Galilee visiting towns and villages in his path. He preaches, he teaches, he heals. The stories are many. But they're often based around journeys. He walks, he stops by the lake, he travels across the lake, he visits synagogues, he goes into hills and mountains to pray, but always travelling. Now, the biblical stories of Jesus mention towns and villages all the time, from Bethlehem to Nazareth to Capernaum, through cornfields to Tyre to Sidon, crisscrossing Lake Galilee, Bethsaida, Caesarea Philippi, and so on. But where are they ultimately headed to? What's the true destination of this journey? Well, all journeys in some way come to a destination, or a conclusion at least. Well, towards the end of the story, after a stop at Jericho, Jesus and the disciples head to the villages of Bethphage and Bethany. And the destination has been revealed by this point in the story. They are headed to Jerusalem, the capital city, the place of the temple, of authority, of power. Now, it's a fitting destination, the conclusion of a great journey, one where Jesus has been at pains to encourage people not to tell others about him. Yet his growing legend precedes him, and he arrives in Jerusalem on the back of a donkey to huge cheering crowds and adulation. The crowds lay cloaks and palm leaves in his path as a sign of his greatness, hence Palm Sunday. This man, this rebel, Jesus, who was defying the authorities and redefining what it meant to be spiritual, a man who demanded good action as well as prayer, is welcomed as the saviour of the oppressed people. It's a fitting end to the story of a great teacher, finally recognised for his good works, welcomed by the people, cheered on as he arrives at the seat of power. Great story. And they all lived happily ever after. They all lived happily ever after. Except, of course, they didn't. Now, I'm sure there are very few out there that are unaware that the triumphant arrival of Jesus in Jerusalem was not the end of the story. In fact, even in this short passage, Jesus arrives in Jerusalem, has a quick check on what is happening, most notably at the temple, and then realises it's getting a bit late, and he heads back out of the city to the village of Bethany for the night. Those heady days when you could just travel at will. Scandalous. But he went back into Jerusalem the following day. He showed his anger at the way the temple had lost its meaning, generating friction with religious and political leaders. And as you will know, his eventual execution that week. The subsequent beginnings of a faith remembering his teachings and trying to put his values into everyday living. But that's Easter. That's not today. Today is instead just another step on the journey. Not the destination at all. That Jesus went from triumphant hero, welcomed by the people, to executed criminal, hated by the people, in such short time is astonishing. It's also a telling story, if perhaps unusually exaggerated, of the fickle nature of human beings. We can turn from one thing to the next very quickly. Often, if not careful, looking for our own comfort above others, and forever in search of the next chapter, because that will be better, won't it? Now, this Palm Sunday is, in reality, like no other in living memory. Most of the world is in lockdown. People being kept off the streets as much as possible. The very memory of crowds in the streets seems a long time ago right now. Yet this is not the end of the story. Not in any way. And like the crowds in the story of Jesus' arrival at Jerusalem, we too have the chance to make our own contribution to the next stage of the story. Deep down, we will know where we want this story to finish. The chapters and the journeys that will take us there will be as varied as each of our own experiences of life, yet collectively they can help shape the coming days, weeks and months. We are each at the mercy of the crowd, yet we are also part of that crowd. Our actions, our intentions, our offers of help, our phone calls and our willingness to follow medical advice will help write that next step in the journey. Now let us come together now for a time in stillness and in silence and in reflection. A time, as Celia Cartwright put it, to empty ourselves, to mix the rational with the mystical. It's a time to re-engage with the rational stories of our lives, with the spiritual depths of the ancients, and the opportunity to recognise and remember the oneness of this world, our connection to each other, the part that each and every one of us plays in making this world. So as we settle our bodies, perhaps closing our eyes, focusing on our breath, let's take some time in stillness, reflecting on the part we play in the astonishing story around us. We're the key worker, vulnerable, with family, or at the end of a phone line, we each have a part to play. From staying indoors, to keeping in contact, to providing care and comfort, let us take time now to allow the next stage of our journey to form. As we come together in this time of stillness and of silence, I shall strike the singing bowl and we'll come together in quiet. The quiet will be broken by music, in which we can continue our reflection. As we relax our bodies, focusing on our breath. Spirit of life, we give thanks for your presence, for light and for love, for night and for change. Our worship is over, but our service continues. As we depart, may there be peace among us, now and forever.